Klein wakes up to find his hands stained with blood, a gun lying on the table, and a hole in his head. He's utterly baffled as scattered memories start flashing through his mind, and the wound in his head slowly begins to heal. He recalls his past life as Ching Ru on Earth, but now he's also carrying someone else's memories. Everything is chaotic and unclear. From what he can gather, he's now inhabiting the body of a man named Klein Moretti, an unemployed history graduate residing in the city of Tingen. He searches through Klein's journal, hoping to uncover more information about what transpired. From the entries, he learns that Klein had met with a man named Welsh about a month ago, and the two of them began decoding an ancient book. This book was apparently connected to the Antigonos family, and although Klein doesn't know much about them, he senses they hold significant importance. Klein continues flipping through the diary, coming across several notable names and terms like the Black Emperor and the Tudor Kingdom. However, he finds it odd that the journal abruptly ends. It all starts to make more sense once the presence of the gun is taken into account. At that moment, the diary opens to the last entry written before the original Klein died. The entry reads, "Everyone is going to die, including me." Reading this convinces him that the previous Klein must have stumbled upon a truth so terrifying that it led to his demise. But what could that truth have been? Just then, Klein's younger sister knocks on his door to wake him up. Realizing he can't let her see the blood-stained mess in his room, he quickly shuts the journal and tries to hide the blood. Still, he hasn't figured out what to do with the gun. Eventually, Melissa walks in and comments on how strange it is that books are scattered all over the floor. She asks if Klein spent the entire night reading again. Klein tells her that he was just tidying up a bit, but he still needs to get rid of the gun. The moment Melissa turns her back, he quickly drops the weapon into his drawer. Unfortunately, he does it a bit awkwardly, and the resulting thud catches Melissa's attention. She asks what that noise was. Klein starts to panic and pulls out a pocket watch from the drawer to cover it up, but then he notices that the watch is broken. Up to now, Melissa hasn't shown much warmth toward him, but without saying anything, she picks up the broken watch and quietly starts fixing it. That simple act tells Klein she must care about him at least a little. Once she finishes, she heads back to brushing her teeth, and when she leaves the room, Klein immediately begins cleaning up all the blood. His memories as Klein remain hazy, but he's sure that whatever caused him to shoot himself must have been tied to that ancient book. Still, setting Klein's death aside, he has to figure out how he ended up in this world in the first place. Before all of this, he was Ching Mingru, an average man whose life was falling apart. One day, out of frustration with his situation, he tried performing a ritual he read about that was supposed to bring good fortune. Somehow, after doing that, he found himself here. A few minutes later, Melissa is dressed and ready for school. She hands Klein a plate of bread and reminds him to visit the bakery later to buy more. He also says she'll cook him something special when she returns, knowing he's been putting in effort to find a job. But Klein has no intention of staying that long. He still doesn't understand much about this place, but one thing is clear: it's dangerous. That's why he plans to attempt the luck ritual again, hoping it might return him to his original world. Before anything else, he decides to head over to the bakery to pick up the bread Melissa asked for, but while he's there, an uneasy feeling creeps in, almost like someone is watching him. After buying the bread, he walks through the city, and aside from the eerie blood-red moon that appears at night, the place seems like a completely normal city. As he strolls along, Klein notices a group of men playing the landlord card game. He's taken aback because that exact game also existed in his previous world. According to historical records here, the game was invented by Emperor Roswell Gustav 100 years ago. Not only that, Gustav was also credited with creating tarot reading, steam engines, and sailboats, massively pushing this world's technology forward. Given all that, Klein deduces that Gustav must have also been someone who transmigrated just like him. That thought brings him a bit of comfort, knowing he's not alone in this world. But the relief doesn't last long. A clown suddenly jumps out, startling him, and Klein instinctively reaches for his gun. To be fair, the clown really does have a creepy appearance, so his reaction isn't entirely unreasonable. However, that strange sensation of being watched returns, making him increasingly anxious. He quickly moves away and heads down the street in a hurry. Now convinced that someone is tailing him, Klein slips into a nearby tent to get away. It turns out the tent belongs to a fortune teller, and Klein happens to be the first customer of the day. She offers to read his fortune at no charge. The mention of tarot cards grabs Klein's attention, so he agrees and asks her to reveal his past, present, and future. The fortune teller then asks which one he'd like to see first. Klein chooses the present, so she turns over a card. The card revealed is the Fool, the 0 card of the deck, typically symbolizing fresh starts or new journeys. Before she can explain it fully, Klein senses the person who had been trailing him is getting closer, and he knows he has to leave. Moments later, someone steps into the tent, asking about Klein, but by that time, he's already slipped away. Later that day, Klein returns home, determined to try the luck ritual again to see if it could actually send him back to his original world. He begins by making talismans and tying them around pieces of bread, using them as ritual catalysts. He places one in each corner of the room and starts chanting Celestial Worthy 4 times in succession. At first, nothing seems to happen, but then a sudden and intense pain hits him and he collapses to the floor, clutching his head as if his body is being torn apart from the inside. When the agony finally fades, he finds himself standing in a vast empty void with glowing red and blue lights scattered across the space. Those lights begin to merge together, eventually bringing forth 2 individuals, Aubrey Hall and Alger Wilson, both appearing extremely disoriented. From their point of view, Klein looks like an all-powerful figure, so they tread carefully in their words and actions. Aubrey asks if this divine realm is his, and though Klein has no clue what she means, he thinks to himself that no divine realm exists without a shrine. As soon as the thought crosses his mind, a shrine begins to emerge from the surrounding gray mist. Klein still doesn't fully understand how any of this is working, but it's clear that he has some degree of control over the gray fog in the realm itself. Alger then asks Klein a simple yet crucial question: who is he? But Klein hasn't really had the time to reflect on it since arriving here. He wonders whether he's still Chomingru from Earth, inhabiting Klein's body, or if he's truly become Klein Moretti. After mulling it over, he makes a choice and introduces himself using a new identity. He tells the 2 they may refer to him as the Fool. Alger then asks if there's a particular reason why they were summoned to this place. Truthfully, Klein brought them here completely by accident, but since he's already taken on this persona, he decides to go along with it. He tells Alger and Aubrey that this was merely a test of some kind. Neither of them questions his explanation, but Aubrey asks if they're allowed to leave now, since it seems he doesn't need anything from them. Klein reassures her that he'll send them back if they wish to go, and that they're not in any danger. Aubrey actually finds the whole situation fascinating. She's always been curious about the supernatural, so she takes the chance to ask Klein how one might become a Beyonder. Klein has no clue what a Beyonder even is, but he can't let that show, so instead he suggests she ask Alger, who should be able to explain. Alger, however, remains wary of Klein. He suspects something is off. After all, Aubrey sounds like a noble woman from Lyon, while Alger himself had been far out at sea when summoned. Bringing both of them here would have taken immense power, and he finds that unsettling. Still, he answers Aubrey's question. He tells her that she could become a Beyonder by joining the Church of the Evernight Goddess, or any other church for that matter. Although very few people ever reach that level, it is still achievable. Aubrey is grateful for the insight, however she doesn't want to sacrifice her personal freedom by joining a church, so she asks Alger if there's another path to becoming a Beyonder. In response, Alger reveals that he happens to have 2 Sequence 9 potions in his possession. Both Aubrey and Klein are taken aback by this, but for completely different reasons. Aubrey is stunned because she knows just how rare and valuable those potions are, while Klein is confused because he doesn't even understand what they're supposed to do. Aubrey asks which specific potions Alger has, and he tells her they're the Sailor and the Audience formulas. The Audience potion in particular would give her enhanced observational abilities. Eventually the 2 reach an agreement, and Aubrey asks Klein to serve as a witness to seal their pact. He agrees. But Aubrey has one more request. She asks if Klein would be willing to host more gatherings like this in the future. Surprisingly, Alger supports the idea, as he now views Klein as a figure of great influence and support. Klein is reluctant to commit, since regular meetings would increase the chances of them discovering that he isn't actually as powerful as he appears. Still, he realizes that he needs to continue gathering knowledge about the mystical world, so he ultimately agrees. He informs them that future meetings will be held every Monday at 3:00 p.m. With that settled, Aubrey suggests that she and Alger come up with aliases, since using their real names would be too risky. Inspired by Klein naming himself the Fool after a tarot card, Aubrey chooses the name Justice, while Alger selects Hanged Man. Just then, in the real world, someone knocks on Klein's door. The noise breaks his concentration, making it harder for him to maintain the gray fog realm. As his control starts to waver, he has no choice but to end the gathering early and send both of them back to their original locations. After returning to his body, Klein quickly hides the bloodstained journal and pushes the gun into the stove. Then he checks the door. Peering through the keyhole, he sees that an inspector is standing outside. With no other option, he opens it. To make his late response seem natural, he messes up his hair and pretends he just woke up from a nap. The man at the door introduces himself as Leonard, a member of the O Police. Without waiting for an invitation, he steps inside, followed by his colleague Dunn Smith. The 2 officers begin questioning Klein about Nia and Welsh, who were reported to have taken their own lives just the day before, which happens to be the same night Klein shot himself. Of course, he can't exactly share that detail with them, so Klein pretends he has no idea what they're talking about. But that act doesn't last long, as Leonard has already found his journal, and the final entry is damning. He directly asks Klein what he meant by writing "Everyone will die." Klein realizes he's in a tight spot and decides to admit that his memory of that night is hazy at best. Dunn then informs him that there's evidence linking Klein to McGovern's manor, where a gun recently disappeared. Dunn wants to know if Klein knows anything about that weapon. Without hesitation, Klein confesses that the gun is hidden inside the stove. Since he's already coming clean, he goes on to say that he woke up this morning after failing to take his own life the night before, and since then, most of his memories have been a blur. Naturally, he omits the part about being a transmigrator. Even though the story sounds bizarre, Dunn actually believes Klein because the details line up with the conclusions he had already drawn. Despite what Dunn may believe, they still insist on taking Klein to a psychic to determine whether he's telling the truth. This makes Klein nervous. He's afraid that the psychic might uncover memories from his previous life as well. But he's in no position to say no to Dunn and Leonard's orders. They lead him downstairs, preparing to escort him into a waiting carriage. Just as they're about to board, Dunn becomes momentarily distracted by a small child nearby. Klein takes advantage of the moment and makes a run for it, darting down a side alley at full speed. But without warning, the environment around him freezes in place and objects begin to levitate. Klein immediately realizes that a Beyonder must be close. He pivots and runs in the opposite direction, but the ground beneath him suddenly rises up, cutting off his path. The entire landscape starts to shift, working against him and trapping him in. Thinking fast, he manages to slip through a narrow gap just before being completely blocked in and bursts out onto the main road. He spots a carriage, jumps in without hesitation, and urges the driver to get him to the port as quickly as possible. The carriage pulls away, and for the first time in a while, Klein feels like he might actually be in the clear. Unfortunately for him, the driver turns out to be none other than Dunn Smith, meaning Klein had walked right into a trap. A moment later, Klein finds himself back at his desk, and the door creaks open to reveal Dunn standing at the far end of the hallway. The unsettling atmosphere around him makes Klein suspect that Dunn might be a Beyonder. But it turns out Dunn isn't the only one present. Out of nowhere, a woman grabs Klein's head, pulling his consciousness into a dreamscape. She begins searching through his mind, digging through his memories. Luckily, the gray fog within Klein's mind seems to shield the parts related to his past life on Earth, preventing her from discovering his true origin. So for now, that secret remains safe. Still, she continues looking for answers about the previous night. Holding his head, she begins asking him direct questions. First, she demands to know what happened with the Antigonos notebook, but Klein sincerely has no clue. She follows up by asking what he was doing at the time of Welsh's death. Her powers force Klein to relive the moment. He pulls out the gun and fires it at his own head. Suddenly, Klein snaps back to the hallway. The woman exits his mind and informs Dunn that Klein is indeed telling the truth about attempting to take his own life, though she couldn't access anything that occurred before that moment. As things stand, Dunn now knows that the Antigonos notebook is still unaccounted for, and Klein has no idea where it might be. But even though he's not guilty of hiding it, Klein is still far from safe. If someone were to come after him, he wouldn't stand a chance in his current state. That's why Dunn offers him a lifeline, an invitation to join their organization and become a Beyonder himself.